Good evening. Welcome to the public meeting of the City School District of Albany Board of Education. If you are planning to speak in public comment tonight, which we invite you to do, now is a good time for you to sign up. There is a sign-up sheet in the table there where Ms. Alexander Mann is standing. The table also holds copies of the materials we will be discussing tonight, which you are welcome to take for your information. Those documents are also available electronically on our Board Docs site, which you can get to easily from the board page at albanyschools.org. We invite those of you who choose to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. In addition to the Pledge of Allegiance, we always focus our meeting by restating the mission of the City School District of Albany, which is to work in partnership with our diverse community to engage every learner in a robust educational program designed to provide the knowledge and skills necessary for success. Before I turn it over to the superintendent for her report, I just want to take a moment to thank Ms. Sierra Sturdivant, who will be here for her last board meeting tonight, as unfortunately she is moving on to what I hope for her will be greener pastures in North Carolina. It has been an absolute joy to have her as the board clerk over the last little while, and we are appreciative of everything she's done for us and wish her all the best as what comes next. Now, Mrs. Adams, do you have a report for us?
Yes, I do. Thank you so very much, Madam President, members of the board. Our summer school programs are in full swing throughout the district. We have a variety of programs for our students at all grade levels, including programs for our special education students and our English language learners. We are also excited to have provided STEM-related opportunities for elementary and middle school girls this summer. These programs include a coding camp for rising 8th graders at the Capital South Campus Center in partnership with AT&T and Capital Region BOCES. We are also offering our own STEMistas program for elementary girls at Hackett Middle School. I would like to recognize elementary STEM supervisor Sarah McGraw. She's in our audience tonight, for her outstanding leadership of our new STEMistas program. It is a wonderful opportunity to expand our district-wide focus on careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Albany High School held the first of 3 freshman welcome days for our rising 9th grade students today. That program is being offered at O'Neill Middle School due to the construction at Albany High this summer. The freshman welcome days provide an opportunity for students to meet Principal Comerford and learn more about what to expect when they enter high school for the first time in September. The program offers information about academic opportunities, the high school bell schedule, clubs, and activities. It also allows our freshmen to start to build relationships with some of their classmates before the new year begins. We have 2 more freshman welcome days coming up, next Tuesday, July 30th, and Tuesday, August 6th. These programs will also be held at O'Neill Middle School. We held a construction career fair at a Brooklyn Career and Technical Center today in our continued efforts to engage our community about career opportunities in the construction industry. We had about 20 participants in our morning session and approximately the same amount in our afternoon session. Both sessions provided information about the wide range of opportunities available for our great careers in the construction trades. We also offered tours of the Rebuilding Albany High School project as part of both sessions. I would like to thank our partners for their efforts in organizing today's career fair and in helping us engage our community in the areas on an ongoing basis. Thank you to Mission Accomplished Transition Services, Turner Construction, the Greater Capital Region Building Trades Council, the City of Albany, and SNUG. Please save the date of our next construction-related community meetings. We will hold Rebuilding Albany High School community updates on Thursday, August 29th. We once again will have a lunch session and a dinner session. Both of these meetings will be held here at the Clements Center. We have a flyer available tonight with more information. A reminder that the school district once again is offering free breakfast and lunch for all children aged 18 and under through the Summer Food Service Program. This year, we are offering summer meals at 9 schools: Abrooken, Arbor Hill, Eagle Point, Giffen, Hackett, O'Neill, Pine Hills, Sheridan Prep, and Toast. As we look ahead to August, I would like to remind our student athletes and their families about the dates that we are offering fall sports physicals. We are offering physicals at Albany High's Abrooken Center and Career and Technical Center on the following days: Monday, August 12th, from 9 a.m. until noon and 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Tuesday, August 13th, from 9 a.m. until noon, and Tuesday, August 20th, also from 9 a.m. until noon. We will also offer physicals at Myers on Monday, August 26th, from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. A current physical is mandatory for any student interested in playing on a school team. Students cannot start practice until they have had a physical. Preseason practices for Albany High's fall sports begin Monday, August 19th. Modified football practice begins Thursday, August 22nd, and all other modified fall sports begin practice on Monday, August 26th. While we have plenty happening throughout the district this summer, we're also making plans for the start of the new school year. Our annual all-staff convocation will be held on the morning of Tuesday, September 3rd. We will be at the Empire State Plaza Convention Center once again this year. We are also planning our annual employee recognition celebration at the Palace Theater on Friday, September 6th. Please save the dates for both of these back-to-school events. I now would like to ask Principal Bill Rivers to come forward and tell us more about the great things that are happening here at the Tony Clement Center for Education.
Thank you. So we'll just go ahead and get started. I am Bill Rivers. I'm the principal of the Tony Clement Center for Education. I'm so grateful to be here and have this opportunity to showcase some of the work that we've done this school year. The first slide is the vision, mission, and goals of the district, which we just went over. And then we have the Tony Clement vision, mission, and Community School Advisory Board charge. And I did want to take the time to just read those to you all. The vision statement: students are empowered to realize their individual aspirations, goals, and potential for greatness. And our mission statement is to provide students with a safe, nurturing, supportive educational experience that is responsive to every student's cultural, emotional, and social development. We ensure equity and access to rigorous and relevant learning opportunities through flexible, innovative programming. Through positive relationships and collaborative partnerships with their families, community, and each other, students will develop the skills to become responsible citizens. And just a summary, we are a community school, and our charge for our board this past school year was to increase the students that were enrolled in after-school activities or internships and job shadowing experiences after school hours, trying to keep our kids engaged productively in the community during those times. So we're looking to increase that by really 20% every school year over the next 5 years, and so that's why our goal is to increase that number to 34 this school year. Will likely be beyond that, and we'll talk a little bit about that. On the next page, I'm just going to talk a little bit about our programs and what we offer. We have a high school program that has a max enrollment of 60 students. We over-enroll this school year, going into next school year, because we know that with attendance, not always we have 60 students in seats, and there's definitely a demand to have more students enrolled in our program. So in the first chart that you see where the students are coming from. So we have 41 students remaining with us that were enrolled in our high school program this year. They're remaining with us into next school year. 15 students are moving up from our middle school program to our high school program. And from Choice, which is a program for students that are repeating ninth graders. They do 2 years in one. We have 9 students from that program that made it to the next grade, and they're moving up to 11th grade with us. And then we have 7 additional students coming from Albany High. So you can see that the seats are limited for Albany High School students because really our own high school program and our middle school program fills a lot of those seats very quickly. The choice program, which is just below that, the chart just below, is again our repeating program. Our kiddos do 2 years in one. So they're the students that failed 9th grade, and they do 9th and 10th grade in 1 year to get back on track to graduate on time. We have 4 of our own students that are enrolled in that program, and the remaining 56 seats are for Albany High School students. On the right-hand side, top right, you can see our middle school program and where our kiddos come from. Each middle school has 14 student slots, so there are some open slots right now, and the Office of People Personnel Services reserves a few slots for student placements during the school year with a total enrollment of 48. So we're expecting to be at around 170 students in our program moving into next school year, and you can see the demographics at the bottom right-hand side. On the next slide, you can see where our students go. So this is student exits from the beginning of last school year through June 30th of this school year. And so with this slide, most of our students don't leave us until after the school year is over. So within that 1 week, we really try to get students planfully placed through our committee and working with other schools in the district to the right placements. So just to highlight some areas, students that remain with us, about 24% of students stay with us. 16% move on to night school, meaning they've earned enough credits to move on and they're back on track to move into night school and graduate. About 15% return to Albany High School. And you see there's some disagrees there. That means we made a recommendation, but the family had requested another option. So we had 10% of students disagreeing with our recommendation to stay with us and want to try Albany High School. And so they reserve the right to do so, and we'll continue to work with Albany High to provide the best supports for them. And you can see as it goes down the list where students eventually end up. The exit criteria for us, we have an enrollment team with our school clinicians, social workers, teachers, administrators, families, and students, and review the whole child, essentially their social history, along with their academic, behavioral, and attendance information. And we use that to make the best recommendation to give the student the best environment to access the most resources and things that are going to challenge them to move forward in their high school careers. I'll talk very briefly about our SET plan from 2018-19 and some of the work that we did and kind of where we're going for next school year. So when I came in, I really was able to take some time and watch and learn and see where the needs were to really enhance the learning of our students and the outcomes of our kids. And really tenets 3 and 4 around curriculum and instruction were the areas that we needed the most lift. And the social emotional areas, we have a lot of supports for kids here with our social work team, our clinical team, and so on. And so diving into the curriculum and instruction piece, we really worked on being in classrooms, my assistant principal and myself, to increase feedback to teachers, to increase instructional rigor in the classroom. We established the project-based learning initiative that we're walking into for next school year, so we laid the foundation for that. We started to do some curriculum work, and I have my team going to training in about 2 weeks in Binghamton to really be able to do this with fidelity. And our goal next school year is 1 cross-curricular project-based learning unit during next school year, and then 2 the following year, and 3 and 4 until our curriculum is fully project-based. And that's what we know our kids need is hands-on. As we move into next school year, if you just look over a little bit to the right where it talks about the graduation, ELA, and math indicators, we're not just going to be doing the fun stuff with project-based learning, but we're going to make sure that students are being challenged to meet the standards within those projects. And so that's why we're also replicating what Albany High School does with their benchmark testing and programming. And so we'll be doing the same benchmark tests in the same windows and challenging our kids to meet those expectations and using that data to drive intervention and additional support. Any questions on those slides up to this point.
So, Ms. Rivers, we're not going to do questions now. I believe
Okay.
we have you scheduled to come back in a couple of months. We've talked about putting the program on as part of our review of all of our high school level programs, and we will save our questions for then, only because we didn't allocate enough time for it. But I can tell by the emotion happening up here that people have about 10 million questions and really would love to ask you them, but we're going to hold on to that till next time.
Thank you. So the challenges that we have are really around reading and math growth and looking at our suspension rate and chronic absenteeism. So what are we going to be doing about that? Our middle school students this school year are going to all have reading intervention built into their schedules daily, which they didn't have. So in addition to their English class, they all will have a reading intervention class where we're using an online platform to support that with a certified special education teacher. And we're looking to increase our reading growth from the 24th average growth percentile to the 50th, and the 50th percentile is really 1 year's worth of growth. So last year, our kids made about a half year's worth of growth in reading, and we need to at least get to an average 1 year of growth, but the goal is to obviously get beyond that to continue to close that gap. For math, students will also receive math intervention, but that will be built into the schedule every other day, and that will also be taught by a certified special education teacher. And we're looking to increase the growth from the 30th percentile to the 50th, a little bit better than a half a year's growth we had this year, but we have work to do there. Really, our kids need more time, and they need explicit instruction in those areas. When you look at suspension rate, we really know that our kids, one, for attendance, will come to school if they feel connected to an adult, and two, will meet expectations around behavior if they have a relationship with a trusted adult in the building. And so we built in for this school year a resiliency block, which is after breakfast in the morning, students have 20 minutes to connect with the adult they want to connect with. So it's a structured connect time. There is no curriculum, but we are providing teachers with sentence starters, questions, conversation pieces to build those relationships with students. Hall monitors, teaching assistants, every adult in the building is to be available at that time so kids can connect with adults in a structured way throughout the building. In addition, we have our CRE, PBIS, and restorative justice initiatives, and we're aligning all that work in a sense-making way for our students, our families, our teachers, and our team. We are looking to decrease our overall suspension rate from 44% to 33% next school year. I believe that we'll be below that 33% if we can roll this out effectively with fidelity. And then lastly, we are replicating the attendance initiative that the district has. We're working with our attendance team to decrease our chronic absenteeism rate from 58% to 58% to 48%. And so as an alternative school, in most alternative schools, attendance is a struggle. And the next page is going to show you some outcomes that show how smart and brilliant our kids are, even though their attendance is not that great. So our successes this school year. Our freshmen, cohort freshmen that earned 5 or more credits moved to 10th grade, 75%. So 3 out of 4 freshmen earned the credits to move on, which met the receivership goal for that. The 2015 cohort students scoring a 55 or higher on the ELA Regents was 88%, again above the goal. And our 5-year graduates, we had 100%. We had 3 of them, and 3 out of 3 made it, and we had 10 weighted incidents. For more explicit academic gains, we had 411% increase for APEX credit recoveries, and the reason why that happened was because we started credit recovery immediately after quarter 1 and didn't wait like we historically had until quarter 4 to do the recovery. So it was built right into their schedules, and we had after-school programming to do that for students. They did a phenomenal job. We also had a 137% increase in new credits for students. So we found that some advanced students, we didn't have electives to offer them, so they could do online blended learning. And many of our students took those classes, like sociology and such, on the online platform to earn additional credits that we didn't offer with classroom teachers, which was phenomenal for many of our students. Our English pass rate on the Regents increased by 26%, which is a significant jump. And we attribute that to our RTI teacher who pushed into all the 11th grade classrooms, and there were 2 teachers in every classroom to target that work. We also did a mock Regents about 2 months before the state exam, and we used that data to really target the argument essay that we saw was poor, and our kids did awesome on their argument essay. And then the living environment Regents increased by 17%, and the reason for that is because we used to do living environment Q1 for the choice program, and then earth science for the next 3 quarters, and kids took both living environment and earth science Regents exams. Instead, we doubled down on one exam, and we had students do environmental studies and align some of that curriculum work from environmental to living environment to get kiddos the 2 credits and the state exam score. And then we had an increase in attendance for the Regents exams by about 9%, which shows an increased dedication from our students. And so lastly, here's the best part. We have pictures of all of the fun things that we did this school year. We have our basketball team on the top right with, we have our uniforms donated by the DA's office, and our kids do some community service to earn those uniforms. You can see our graduates in the middle, and one thing that I'm exceptionally proud of is our first honor roll breakfast, we had about 9 kids, and by our 4th, we had 40, and we filled the cafeteria. So that was amazing to see that growth throughout the school year. And then the last slide is all of our community partners. So we have a number of community partners. Again, the DA's office, we work with Star Commonwealth for our trauma-informed work. The Cornell Cooperative Extension helps us get kiddos out in the community and doing community service. SNUG comes in to mentor many of our students and work with our kids regularly. We work with SUNY STEP to get tutors into the classrooms for math, science classes. We work with Mission Accomplished to provide those job-embedded work opportunities for kids, and some of our kids might be participating in the rebuild at Albany High. We work with Parsons and Whitney Young to provide wraparound services to students and families, Albany PAL as well. And what you see in the middle is our newest partnership with the high-intensity drug trafficking program with the DEA's office and the DA. Friday and Saturday nights, we are opening our building to a basketball mentorship program. So 2 weeks ago, we had about 12 kids show up. Last week, we had 30, and we're expecting 50 tomorrow. So we're excited about that. And again, the DA and the DEA, National Guard, they've all done a great job helping us with that. And that
Well, thank you
concludes.
very, very much for the very detailed report. We really appreciate it, and we do look forward to having a chance to ask you some follow-up questions in the future.
Thank you.
And this concludes the superintendent's report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Superintendent Adams. This is the time in the meeting we set aside to hear from district residents, parents, students, and other members of the public. We welcome input about the decisions we are making tonight, and and also by email, phone, or postal mail. We invite everyone who speaks in public comment to stay for the balance of the meeting and to consider coming to our meetings on a regular basis or listening in to the recorded meetings if you can't join us in person. It is always helpful to us when teachers, students, families, and other community members are knowledgeable about the decisions we are facing and share their thoughts with us. While you're making your remarks, please keep in mind that by law, information about individual students and specific district staff cannot be shared. Every student and every staff member deserves to know that concerns about them will not be aired in public. Also, please keep in mind that public comment is not the best place to first alert the district to a concern you have. We ask that you share concerns first with relevant staff, such as the teacher or principal, and if you feel it's not addressed adequately, appeal that to the person's supervisor, up the chain of command if necessary to the superintendent. Decisions made by the superintendent may be appealed to the board. Finally, please note that the board generally does not respond during the public comment period. If you need a response, please consider contacting us by email, phone, or postal mail. When I recognize you, please state your name and city of residence. Statements are restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes. I should acknowledge that Ms. Wilson, who is our secretary, is unfortunately not here today. She is traveling on business. So instead, Ms. Smith will reprise her old role as secretary and man the timer. You'll get a 1-minute notice and a 10-second notice, and I'll notify if your time has expired. There's only one name on the list tonight, which is Nolene Smith.
Good evening. I'm not going to hold you for long. I'm just coming by to say thank you for allowing the Baby Institute to have our summer camp here at Tony Clements. The staff here is just wonderful and very engaging with us. They sometimes come out and play with the little kitties because they're running back and forth. So it's a really good thing. We're serving roughly about 85 meals out of this space. Unfortunately, we're not on the district list because we kind of got here late, as usual. So hopefully next year we can come back and we can be a part of the feed-in program for the district. But overall, we're just really excited and we're really grateful for the opportunity to do our camp. Last year we did it, we had one classroom. This year we have 2 classrooms. We have roughly 32 4- and 5-year-olds in the mornings and 26 in the afternoon. And then we have a sibling program, so we go up to 3 o'clock for the siblings, and they all hang out and do crafts and play in the gym. So it's a really great opportunity, and I just want to say thank you. And I won't be able to stay to the meeting because I got to run and get food. I've been working all day. Thanks very much, though.
So if you see me dodging and weaving here, it's hard to get a place where the sun is not directly in my eyes. So that's why I'm moving around a lot. We now move to the part of our meeting we call routine consent. During this part of the meeting, we approve routine matters for the district. These usually include items like contracts, field trips, personnel matters, and that kind of thing. We review these carefully and then vote on them as a group with no discussion. That allows us to use our meeting time more efficiently. Nonetheless, each board member has the option to set aside any routine consent item in order to require discussion and a separate vote on that item. I will now entertain a motion to adopt the routine consent agenda. Ms. Smith, second. Ms. Krejci, are there any set-asides? Ms. Alexander Mann.
I'm going to set aside 26 and 29.
I'm just double checking that we have the right ones. 26 is the Full Out Dive Club, and 29 the Northern Rivers Family Service. Do I have that right? Any other set-asides? I want to set aside personally the UPK contracts, which I still think we can handle as a group. I just want to get clear on a piece of information about that. Anything else to be set aside? Okay. All in favor of adopting the routine consent agenda, less 26, the Full Out Dive Club, 29, the Northern Rivers Family Services, and 34 through, I can't remember where it ends, 50, the UPK contract. That is unanimous. So now we'll go through the set-asides. May I have a motion to adopt number 26, the Full Out Dive Club? Ms. Smith, second by Dr. Chatoor. Is there any discussion? Ms. Alexander Mann.
Yeah, I just wanted, this is actually positive, I just wanted to point out that this is, I think, the second year that we're with the Full Out Dive Club, and the outcomes in the first year were amazing. A diver who was in the 7th grade finished 9th in Section 2 championships, and that was pretty positive. So, so that's, I just wanted to give a shout out.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the Full Out Dive Club contract? That is unanimous. May I have a motion to adopt the Northern Rivers Family Services contract? Ms. Krejci, seconded by Dr. Chatoor. Is there any discussion?
I'm an administrator at Northern Rivers, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay. All in favor of Northern Rivers? That is Ms. Krejci, Ms. Smith, Ms. Savage, Dr. Chatoor. No oppositions, and I believe an abstention by Ms. Alexander Mann. And then may I have a motion to adopt the UPK contracts, 34 through 50. Ms. Krejci, seconded by Ms. Smith. Is there any discussion? That's me talking to me. Can I just get clarification on the consolidation of the funding streams and how that impacts our overall understanding of how that works? This has been something that we've been trying to deal with for a number of years. For those who are not familiar with this topic, those of us who were early adoptees of UPK were, I believe, and Melissa's going to clarify this for us, funded at a much lower level per student than more recent entrants into the UPK world. And it's been a bit of a problem for us, and we've been subsidizing UPK out of our general fund to make up the difference. And so I'd like clarification on the cover memo, which I didn't really understand.
The cover memo, because I just want to make sure that I...
Bobby,
So
can you
this-
bring up the cover memo?
Yeah, it is.
this upcoming school year for 2019-2020, EPK was absorbed into UPK. So there's only one grant funding stream for this current school year and moving forward. So even though they had two different per pupil allocations, we get one grant funding stream now, so it's combined. So it's just the money that we got for UPK and the money that we got for EPK is now combined into one. So there was no change with the actual allocations that we were receiving from them. They just combined them under UPK.
So, and in terms of, and the amount of money that we're getting per student has not changed, and it still varies, depends on which program the student's in. It's just lumped into one grant by name. Do I understand that correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
And so we were able to I'm sorry, I was just checking to make sure that we were able to increase the per pupil allocation this year without support from the general fund because we lost the 2 classrooms at North Albany Academy with the conversion of that from an elementary to middle school. We have oversaturated our community-based organizations, and at this time, some of the providers that we collaborate with are looking for alternate locations to expand their programs, but at this time, we were not able to make up those seats in other locations, so we were actually able to provide an increase to the per pupil allocation within the budget grant.
But it's still accurate and still the case that we are still penalized in some sense for having been an early adopter of UPK, and other districts that joined in later
Absolutely.
are getting paid more per student. Okay,
Yes.
just making sure I didn't miss a memo on some benefit to us.
No.
Okay, with that discussion, any further discussion? All in favor of adopting the UPK contracts? That is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam President, we have a few appointments that we would like to recognize tonight. So, Madam President, members of the board, we'd like to welcome, thank you very much for approving the appointments, but we have 4 individuals that we would like to recognize tonight. We now have a new Assistant Director of Special Education, Ms. Emily Lawyer. Would you please stand? Thank you very much. We also have the Assistant Principal for Ash Elementary School, Mr. Glenn Westfall. They brought their own sharing sections. At the high school level, we have 2 appointments, our academy principals now. First, Mr. Joseph Slecko, who is not here with us because he is celebrating his birthday today. So happy birthday, Joe. We do say welcome to you. And this is a name that all of you will know, and someone that we're very proud and happy to have this opportunity as Academy Principal at Albany High School, Mr. Richard Shea. Congratulations. So congratulations to you all, and welcome to our team. We're so very excited to have you on board. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much. That brings us, I think, to the discussion action on the Myers SEP. It's typically our process where we discuss something in one board meeting and then we do not act on it that meeting so that we can give members of the community a chance to reflect and react to our discussion and give us any feedback and act on it at the second meeting. The only time we don't do that usually is when there is some sort of a deadline that we are coming up against because of the way the school calendar works and the way the SED calendar works. In this case, there was not enough time to prepare the report and have 2 board meetings. Nonetheless, there were some number of community and parent meetings involved, so we have already collected some feedback from people not on the board on this, so we do anticipate acting on this tonight. Ms. McKenna and Dr. Wilson-Turner.
Good evening, Superintendent Adams, Board President Savage, and members of the Board of Education. Tonight, Dr. Wilson-Turner and I will review the SEP process for the 2019-20 school year and the changes under the ESSA accountability system. In addition, I will provide you with a summary of the Myers Schools Comprehensive Education Plan. Because of Myers accountability status, their plan must be submitted to the New York State Education Department for review and approval. That due date is tomorrow. All of the other plans will be reviewed on August 8th and approved at the following board meeting. These plans do not need to be submitted to the New York State Education Department as has been done in prior years. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Wilson-Turner to talk about the steps in the SEP development process because they are new this year.
So similar to previous years, we always have a SEP development team. It's usually an evolution of the building leadership team. However, the state has modified its requirements around stakeholder participation in the SEP development, specifically for our comprehensive support and improvement schools and our targeted support improvement schools. Those schools are required to identify stakeholders that are parents of students of the subgroups that are not meeting the targets established for the school. And therefore, those parents' voices are part of the conversation and the school improvement planning for those buildings. So buildings had to make a concerted effort to get those parents to the table and to contribute throughout the process, not as just a final read over and sign off. And so you'll notice that as a difference in the SEP team development. The other thing, the next piece is what we've always done, and that's identify the needs and determine root causes of the issues that we're facing. And traditionally, we do that through our diagnostic tool for school and district effectiveness reviews. And a significant part of time is spent doing a self-reflection on where the building is and what results they're obtaining and what is causing them to obtain those results, both positive and negative. We've spent a lot of time this year in particular talking about human challenges versus organizational challenges. There's a tendency for us to just want more staff to solve issues versus looking at the effectiveness of our systems and how we are deploying staff effectively to meet the needs of all of our students. And so one of the things we do with our teams is really push back on what barriers they're facing and why they think they're facing those barriers so they can really begin to unpack and reveal what their true barriers to success are and then develop plans that will address them. A significant part of that process is also the review of data. And so we look at multiple data sources from the New York State assessment data to our NWA data, our internal benchmarks, attendance data, discipline data, anything that will help paint the entire picture of what's occurring in the school and when those barriers may occur. So the significant change that you will notice in the plan is the structure of the plan. So you all got used to the tenets, and what all those tenets means as many times as we set them to you, and it's what sits in our DSIP still, so that process hasn't changed. However, SCD did give us the option to choose between staying with the effective practices or the tenet approach to writing a school improvement plan, or moving to a more data-driven school improvement plan. And in the light of new accountability system, we knew that we needed to shift our focus to the data option, specifically because of the successful work we've seen in our receivership schools who have had those clear targets for improvement and how they're specifically working towards them. So it has been a very steep learning process for all of us, but we're really proud of the efforts that our buildings have put forward in trying to work towards their specific ESA indicators. And we'll go through a little bit more specifically as to what those targets will be. Another new piece is identifying the evidence-based intervention, which was really interesting when it was rolled out to us. State Ed had identified some practices that they were in support of, but you also had the option to go forth and find your own evidence-based intervention on sites like What's Works Clearinghouse, which shows you research-based interventions that have proven effectiveness, or to go and establish your own research to support a strategy that you wanted to use. Because the state education department selected evidence-based interventions were in alignment with the work that we were currently doing and needed to refine, we selected from that state education list. When you read the elementary school improvement plans, you will notice that every elementary school is refining their coaching practices because that is one of the research-based practices, and we've invested a lot in our coaching resources. And Lori will speak more specifically to the evidence-based practices for Myers and then the secondary schools. Finally, the big shift that you will notice as you read the plans, we worked so hard to get our folks to really clear, concise, little action plans so that they weren't trying to throw the whole kitchen sink in. But then again, State Ed shifted the approach to writing the action plan, which we actually think makes a lot of sense. It's just a lot more that goes into it. And that is to really shift from activities to concrete action steps that are going to help you complete those activities. And so we tried to get our schools to organize still those 2 to 3 top priorities that they want to work through in each area, but then to lay out very clearly the steps they felt they needed to take to achieve that. And the state was really clear that they didn't want September to June activities. They wanted schools to really kind of break out when activities would occur and to see the evolution of action steps throughout the course of the school year. So you'll notice that the plans are divided from August to January, and then there's a benchmark in the middle. that will let you know that you're on track to meet your goals. And then you have another set of action steps that are from January to June. And the expectation is when you hit that mid-year benchmark that you may shift your activities that occur for the second half of the school year. Also, it's typically around the time that we go in and do the DTSDE review. And so schools also make mid-course corrections during that point that then will be reflected in the second half of their action plan. Oh, you want me to? Okay, yeah. So the SEP template is still a lovely Excel template that is very difficult to navigate. And so that has not changed, and the tabs are still at the bottom, but you all receive a PDF version for ease of reading and use. And like we said, in the past, the tabs have been for the DTSDE tenants. What you'll notice now is the tabs are for those specific areas and where schools are being measured per their ESA indicators. Still me, okay. So there are different indicators for the elementary and middle school level than there are for the high school level. And so at the elementary, if you remember, a few months ago to our ESA indicator presentation, they have an English language arts goal, they have a math goal, they have chronic absenteeism, and then English language proficiency or school self-selected. All of our schools, none of our schools were identified for English language proficiency, and as a result, they had the opportunity to select a different indicator that they would like to measure. And so we strongly recommended that they choose one of two areas, and that was either discipline and social emotional learning and developing a plan for that, or science for elementary schools, because science is now included as a part of their metrics. So depending on the school's performance in science, they determined whether they would go discipline or science, and it also was influenced by their survey goal. Their survey goal comes from the DTSDE surveys, where they get input from the parents, the teachers, and the students, and they choose a result that is less than positive for their school that they want to work on, and they build a specific plan with action steps around that. And so those are the components. What is interesting, and Lori may talk a little bit more about this, is the state set these goals for schools, so they're not creating SMART goals. You're not seeing by June 20th, we will do blah, 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 blah to get to this. The state said, here are your targets, and they're based on the measures of interim progress that are provided to us each year. That it's very similar, like I said, to the receivership process, where you have to hit those marks each year to really know that you're going to be on track to meet the state's goal.
So the high school is a little different than the elementary and middle level, whereas elementary and middle have the 5 goals, high school has 6 goals. So that there's a graduation rate goal where Albany High School will establish or has established a 4-, 5-, and 6-year graduation rate for the 2019-20 school year. And those are based on, again, those MIPS that the State Education Department provides the school. There's also a combined ELA and math goal, both of which will be based on reaching the 2019-20 school year MIPS and improving the ELA and math composite performance index results from the 17-18 school year, and that's the actual performance of how students perform on the Regents exam. Similar to the elementary and middle is the chronic absenteeism, so I won't go into detail on that one, but the high school is focusing on their chronic absenteeism rate, and you'll see that in their actual plan when you get that in a couple of weeks. English language proficiency or school selected, because Albany High School scored above a 2 or above, they do not need to select the English language proficiency, so we did select a goal based on disproportionality, discipline referrals, and suspensions, and that action plan will be detailing out how to reduce disproportionality, discipline referrals, and the suspension rate. The biggest change, I believe, from the former accountability system to the new one for the high school is what they call college, career, and civic readiness. This is a method of using diplomas, credentials, advanced course credits, and enrollment, career and technical education certifications, and indicators such as biliteracy to determine how a school is preparing students to be ready for college, a career, and civic engagement once a student leaves the school. So that is new, and you'll see, again, in the action plan how that will be developed. And then finally, a school-related goal, same as the elementary and middle school, where we're using the DTSDE survey results from parents, students, and students to identify areas to focus on for the 1920 school year. We talked a little bit about this already, so I'm not going to go into detail. This is really duplicative, and these are just the templates that have included in the ESSA indicator template. And Cecily talked about that, so I won't really go into detail on that one. Okay, so the Myers overview. We had mentioned that you have to have a stakeholder participation group for developing the SEP for CSI and TSI schools. Myers did have 36 stakeholders participate in the development of the plan, collaboration, and/or the consultation. Within their plan, they had to identify an evidence-based strategy. That evidence-based strategy that they selected was establishing an early warning intervention and monitoring system. I do have a summary that I will provide you, but basically that is really looking at our multi-tiered systems of supports and putting some processes and procedures in place to use the data dashboard, identify students who are at risk, put interventions in place, work with teams of teachers to ensure that those plans are being implemented with fidelity, and then going back and interpreting the data again to determine whether or not those interventions are working, et cetera. So it's a system that we do have in place, but what we have found is that the system that is in place is not being implemented with fidelity, and those systems and structures are not consistent across the school. So that was the evidence-based strategy that Myers had selected. So a summary of their plan. So for the ELA indicator, based on the needs assessment and the data reviewed, it was determined that the district's secondary data team model is inconsistently executed and monitored with fidelity. As a result, leaders and teachers will implement and monitor the model at the team meeting and classroom level to meet the needs of all students. And you'll see a consistent pattern as I go through these indicators. You'll hear me talk a lot about fidelity and consistency, and so that's really the focus of these action plans. In the action plan for ELA itself, you'll see included embedded professional development centered on best practices that promote student ownership and voice in English language arts. You'll see coaching cycles, data teaming, and participation in feedback cycles with instructional leaders. So we have built a system in this action plan for ELA, and it's very similar in the math action plan as well, where building administrators and district level administrators will be pushing into common planning time, specifically the data teaming cycle, and providing very explicit feedback on the work that they're doing within those data teams. And there is a connection to the data team and the instructional walkthroughs, and you'll see that detailed out as well in that action plan. Like I said, very similar for the math indicator. We saw same thing around the fidelity and implementation and the data teaming when they're talking about math. And the action plan summary for the math indicator is really focused around professional development, common benchmark assessment developing, the data teaming, and feedback to teachers. The professional development will really focus on the mathematical discourse, the communication that occurs in the classroom, and then encouraging students to construct their own mathematical understanding through the discourse in an effective way to teach mathematics. One of the things that will be a really strong focus in the math indicator plan is the development of the benchmark assessments. They'll be created, administered and analyzed during that data cycle time to assess whether or not students learning toward grade level standards is actually happening, and then to inform future instruction and data cycles for the remainder of the year. The next indicator action plan is around the survey. The school selected from the parents item 39, which is around student behavior does not interfere with instruction. And that was the reason they selected that one is because it was pretty consistent between the students, the staff, and the parent responses. And so they really wanted to focus on improving that. To address that, there will be an increased focus on preventative strategies in the classroom, building positive relationships among students, teachers, and parents, and then the work through increasing the capacity with the building leadership team, the student support team, and the PBIS committees through analyzing the data, embedding professional development during common planning time, and aligning with the district protocols. Again, it really goes back to implementation of preventative strategies, the code of conduct, classroom management tier 1 plans, fidelity checks, et cetera, just like the ELA and the math indicator. The next one is the school selected indicator around disproportionality, discipline referrals, and suspension indicators. Again, we, during the data review, and the needs assessment, it was identified or revealed that there was inconsistency in the implementation of Tier 1 behavior management in all classrooms, the inconsistency in the implementation of behavior improvement plans and contracts, and then the consistent application of the code of conduct and referral process. So that action plan will focus around the implementation, again, of Tier 1 behavior management plans in all classrooms, monitoring the plans for fidelity, and reviewing the impact on student behaviors, as well as ensuring consistent application of the code of conduct and the referral process. And then finally, the chronic absenteeism indicator. It was recognized in that needs assessment process that there is a need for a system for managing chronic absenteeism at the school, including monitoring the interventions. They also recognize that there is a need to more actively engage parents and students in the process of improving and attendance and the importance of attendance on their schooling. And then finally, they recognize that the school needs to recognize students for attendance through incentives and self-progress monitoring. So their plan really addresses those three components. They will be redesigning the attendance committee's processes and protocols to capture accurate attendance data, and then the student support team and the attendance committee will then review the student data to put in place appropriate leveled supports to consist of parent meetings, consistent phone calls home visits, and positive student recognition. What they realize is what they've been doing in the past has not had a positive impact on increasing student attendance at Myers Middle School. So that is a summary of the plan. I'm sure you've had the opportunity to review it, and you'll note, as Dr. Wilson Turner mentioned, that the action plans are very lengthy. So we have put together a summary of Myers' plan to summarize for you, so you don't have to read step by step. And now we'll open it up to questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. McKennell and Dr. Wilson Turner. As is our normal practice, I ask my board colleagues to think hard about which is their most important question. We will always we'll ask each of you to ask one question so we can go around. If we need to go around a second time, we can. Ms. Smith.
First, I just wanted to thank you both. I don't know whether I recall or whether you just reminded me that these templates and things would be changing. And I wanted to just kudos to you all and to staff for kind of embracing the new format. I want to say, and I'm sure this is not the right way to say it, but it feels like it's a much more honest assessment of the problems that need to be addressed at this school. And sure that we'll see this roll out at other schools as well. And so, and I guess what I really want to say is that it seems to be much more focused. Like even going through the lengthy plan, I felt like, oh wait, yes, I can see how this is being, rolled out. So I wanted to just kudos to everyone for sort of taking this on, and I have no idea of all the changes that you had to go through with everyone involved, but I wanted to just say it was a good read and a good assessment. I did have a question around the participation, and I don't know whether generally it's been true that Myers has had a good participation with parents and others in this process, but it seemed to me it appeared much better. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but if it is better, is there something that we did differently, and if so, what is that something?
Yeah, so the parent participation was a challenge. We did have 4 parents involved in what I call the consultation of the development of the plan. We did put out on in multiple communication modes asking for parents to participate in the development of the plan. We weren't as successful as we had hoped to be, but the 4 or 5 parents that did come in to review the plan and give us feedback were amazing, and they gave us some really, I guess, food for thought as we're moving forward in the implementation of the Myers plan. But I'll tell you how we got those parents to come in is we actually talked with the PTA, the PTSA, and they helped get some parents in. And I think we need to begin to think about creative ways of getting our families in, whether it's every teacher calling one parent, or that personal invite. And I think we'll begin to see an increase in the parent engagement of the work if we begin to personally invite them rather than sending out an SNN or
Right.
post on Facebook, et cetera. That personal invite really helps.
And did you find also that participants at the end result was they too saw focused? Did they see the differences between plans that we've done before versus this one?
Yes.
Did it make sense to them?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And I just want to make note, too, that one of the differences at the middle level, and I'll even say at the high school level, but not to the degree at the middle level, is this year we were really strategic in the participation of district-level supports from our instructional coaches to our instructional supervisors to attendance teachers, PPS support, et cetera. And I really think that helped to focus our building level leadership teams because the district level folks really see the big picture from the DCEP all the way down, and they help to really bring everything together. So what you'll see when you look at the middle school plans, for example, the consistency, they're not identical, but the consistency across the middle school plans, because we're noticing the same type of implementation issues around fidelity and consistency.
Ms. Krejci. Thank you. This is really just so very thorough and detailed, and I think it's going to be very helpful in allowing people who are working on it to know, are we on track, are we on target? Because you can really look and say either we are or we aren't. If we aren't, here's what we need to do to get back on topic. I think that's great. I just had questions because there seem to be 2 goals that relate to student behavior and discipline, and they define the subgroups of students that they're targeting for extra intervention differently. The survey-based one talks about students that have had 3 or more behavioral interventions in a month. And then the second one talks about students in the top 20% of discipline referrals. And I kind of wondered, is that the same population roughly? Like, how many discipline referrals would the students in the top 20% typically have? Is that which group is bigger?
Probably the students in the top percent that you just mentioned. It's, without looking at the data, it's difficult to really answer that question with 100% accuracy. But what you'll see is a lot of, you'll see students with multiple discipline referrals or suspensions in that number.
And that's why I was kind of wondering why the different measures, not only just different measures, but different types of measures, where the one is a finite number of infractions and then the other is just the top 20%, which you'll always have a top 20% no matter how great you get. So I was just curious about that the thought behind that.
Madam President, members of the board, Member Krejci, if I'm understanding your question, you're differentiating between whether the 3 or more are duplicated or unduplicated, or the top 20% are duplicated or unduplicated. Is that along the lines of what you're asking?
I think I was just asking, so why are we trying to measure the one by number of infractions and measure the other by the percentage? Just generally asking about that. And then just kind of roughly trying to get an idea of how many kids we're talking about. Because I don't want to have duplicate meetings about the same kids that might be redundant.
And they may or may not overlap, and we can look into that
So I
and
was just kinda
provide that
curious.
in an SBU.
Like,
But-
I don't need a lot of specific data. I was just curious as to the thought behind it, if you knew why those were chosen differently.
They may not be the same. You may have some students that may have 3 or more, but they still may not be in the top 20% depending on what the infraction was.
Okay.
Or what they've done.
Ms. McKenna.
The other piece to that is when you think about tier one is the process or the discipline system or the classroom management system for all students and what we would do. When you think about students with 3 or more discipline referrals or suspensions, they would be elevated to a tier 2. And then those that potentially could be in the 20% could be your tier 3. So it really depends on.
And may I ask a follow-up question, because you raised a question that hadn't even occurred to me. When we say top 20% of discipline referrals, is that about the maximum number? Is that basically based on how many referrals, or based on the severity of the referrals? So somebody who throws a paper airplane every single day in class, for example, versus somebody that, stabs somebody one day, but doesn't do anything else the other days. That's why I was curious how you get the figure in the top. How do you determine whether someone's in the top 20% of discipline referrals?
So it would be based on the code of conduct, number one, and then we would look at so we separate out classroom referrals to office referrals. So what we're talking about here are the office referrals, which are a higher level infraction. And so the example that you just used around the paper airplane in the classroom, that would not rise to the level of an office referral per se, but a student who is fooling around in the classroom and that play fighting becomes a real fight and a student gets injured, that would rise to the level of an office referral. That's those 20% that we're talking about, as well as those 3 or more referrals. So those students with 3 or more referrals could be one and the same of those 20% students.
Right.
Not always,
Okay,
but most
so
often.
right, gotcha, thanks. Dr. Chatur.
And after years of getting used to the old format, took me a while to. So the summary greatly helps. So thank you so much for that. So I'm trying to understand the statement that says, both for the ELA as well as the math, where it says it was revealed that the district secondary data team model is inconsistently executed and monitored with fidelity. So I'm trying to understand that. Can you give me like a scenario that explains what is that inconsistency? And is it because we did not have Ken's superb data dashboard before to follow through, or is that going to alleviate this? I'm just trying to understand, because this is going to be similar across all schools, right? I'm just trying to understand that statement.
So which indicator are you specifically speaking to?
I mean,
Any of them.
Yeah, ELA, or
Yeah,
it's there
yeah.
for both ELA and math.
Yeah, so what was happening, when you think about implementation with fidelity and consistency, there needs to be active engagement from the leadership all the way down. And what we were finding is that that we weren't seeing the leadership participation as much as we would have liked to have seen it during common planning time, for example, or in our school-based support team meetings. And not having that leadership participation was resulting in steps in the process not being implemented with fidelity, and therefore not being monitored, and therefore not having the intended impact on addressing whether it was an academic intervention or a behavioral intervention. And so with putting these action plans in place, with building the fidelity checks and the systems to address the areas of need, we really feel as though we will see an impact on student outcomes. And we've gone as far as at the middle level thanks to the instructional supervisors, support is building that common planning time structure where the building leaders have scheduled time, and it's already on their calendars for the 1920 school year to go into those common planning time meetings. The instructional supervisors will go into those common planning time meetings, for example, and really work with the teachers and provide actionable feedback and deliberate feedback to ensure that, one, we are implementing with fidelity, and there is consistency across common planning time teams and the interventions that we're putting in place, whether it's academic or behaviors, really having the intended impact on student outcomes.
So in the end, this would be like, so Section A and Section B would be comparable. And
Exactly.
Section A and Section B at Myers will be compared to Hackett and to Edmund O'Neill.
Yes.
Ms. Smith wants to just ask a follow-up.
So, Dr. Chatur, thank you for that question. And I'm not exactly sure if I just heard what you said because of the way I'm hearing your comments, but it occurred to me while you were speaking and while you were responding that even if it was sort of like in parens, where we could have a sense, at least I know it may not make that much difference, you know, generally, but because we're trying to stay at that that system level, if you could, in parentheses, like indicate what you just said, like, you know, lack of structure, you know, lack of leadership at the top, you know, just so that we have a sense of what, I'm sorry.
I don't mean to interrupt. I was just asking, can anybody see if my computer is plugged in? Because I am not getting any power.
Sorry. It's okay. Right. And again, I don't want to belabor. It's just a matter. I just want to be able to have a better understanding when you say inconsistency or lack of fidelity, what that might mean, so that at least as a board, we have a, you know, and certainly your schools have a better sense of what the problems are systemically.
Madam President, members of the board, Vice President Smith, I just want to make sure that I'm clear, because I think the overarching piece, are you saying you want that individualized for each school? Because even though we say, so the big picture is that there are inconsistencies. At every school, it's not going to be the same inconsistencies.
Exactly.
So to parenthetically identify that, are you, and we can, but just to make sure that we're clear,
Sure.
it would need to be identified for each school what those inconsistencies may have been.
Right. Or maybe it, I mean, I want to make sure that it, from my perspective, that it's getting reflected in the plan then.
Yeah, so
And
I
so
think,
I just want to, and again, I may have skipped over
yeah,
some of
so
it.
I think, and because I didn't want to just read the needs statement, but what you'll see in each indicator is, for example, for the ELA indicator, it talks, the needs statement is based on qualitative and quantitative measures of stakeholder performance, and then in parentheses, student, teacher, leader. It was revealed that the district's secondary data team model is inconsistently executed and monitored with fidelity. As a result, leaders and teachers will implement and monitor the model at the team meeting and classroom level to meet the needs of students. So I think it is reflective in the needs statement. I just didn't specifically state it in that term.
And that is why I was asking the question, because thank you very much, Ms. McKenna. I was going to refer you to that document
Got it.
because I didn't know if that was what you were asking for or if there was something different
I
than
don't
what
want
we're already
to
providing.
make more work. I simply wanted to make sure that, and I appreciate that, I wanted to make sure I'm seeing that. And if it's so much of a systemic issue, I would expect to see it not just in the need statement, but in the action plan as a as a way you're tackling that problem. So it's just
So
logically
when-
thinking through. Yeah.
When you are reviewing the plans that will be sent to you, that's where you're going to see that. And that's why I want to make sure that it's clear, because if not, then we'll need to add more information if needed.
So I only have one question, but it's a little bit of a multi-topic area, which is essentially what do we need to provide additional resources at Myers compared to what we're currently planning? And in particular, the things that have been things that I'm hearing about in various sources are support for first-year teachers in terms of Tier 1 classroom management seems to be something that I hear a fair amount about. I also hear about restorative practices, lack thereof, or whatever we're doing to help children understand that their behavior is not a compliance issue. It's a dignity and respect issue. So I hear a fair amount about that. And I'm just wondering if we have, given the fact that the school, as we all know, has been through a series of leadership challenges, whether we have sufficient staffing from, I know, for example, at Edmund O'Neill, we've had good success with using the hall monitors as a take a break, come to the classroom, let the student take a moment to cool down, and then return to the classroom, kind of break off. And do we have sufficient staffing at Myers to deliver those services to a point where we can address some of this on day one? Because this plan, and I did read much of it and scanned through it, that's going to be wonderful as it evolves over the course of the year, but on September 6th, we're going to have students in those classrooms, and those students deserve a calm, cool, collected, positive environment in which to learn. And so that's my question is, do we need to add anything immediately in order to backfill while we wait for this plan to catch up?
So I do not think it's a staffing issue. I really believe it's around systems, structures, routines, expectations. And I'll go back to the implementation with fidelity of those systems, routines, and expectations. We are looking at, and we're in the end stages of finalizing the plan for trauma-informed. We will be bringing on our two middle schools, Myers and Hackett, into the trauma-informed resilience coach model that we've been doing at one of our elementary schools, O'Neill and Tony Clement. So that will add some additional resources to that building and really provide supports to teachers in the classroom, because a part of that resilience coach model is to have the STAR resilience coach push into the classroom and provide direct feedback to those teachers who are struggling with Tier 1 classroom management, for example. So we are looking at that, and I am working closely with Ms. Piper on identifying those areas within the building and around the building that need additional attention. And I don't mean attention in the sense of adding additional resources, but really strategically placing the resources that we already have at Myers appropriately.
Okay. Anybody have a second question? If not, then we have an action that we need to take tonight. So I'll ask for a motion to adopt the Myers SEP as presented tonight. Dr. Tatur, seconded by Ms. Krejci. All in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That brings us to the next topic on our agenda. For those of you who do not come to board meetings regularly, we always structure our board meetings so that our actions come first. Barring some unusual circumstances, the board would not be expected to act on anything else tonight. The balance of the agenda will be a discussion agenda. And I turn it now over to Dr. Tatur for the policy portion of the agenda.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. In the past, we've been doing a lot of policies, and I told you that we've been trying to catch up on updating our policies. We are finally caught up. So thank you, Sierra. So what I bring to you today is Policy 2160, which is School District Officer and Employee Code of Ethics. This policy outlines the ethical standards of conduct to be followed by all district officers and staff as educators and public employees in the community. Adherence to a code of ethics promotes public confidence in the schools and furthers the attainment of district goals. This policy was revised to better match the NESBA standard policy. In the past, our policy had a lot of the same things, but did not specify board members and a few other items. So those have been included now, because no one's above the law, right? We all have to maintain the code of ethics. So
Any questions or discussions on this single policy instead of 15 like we've been doing the last couple of board members? It's nice to have it more simplified. Okay, so we would anticipate bringing that forward for action on the next board meeting on August 8th, and that brings us to another policy, but we've pulled this out of the policy agenda because it is a brand new policy and quite a different policy than ones we've adopted in the past, and this is the acceleration and enrichment policy. Superintendent Adams, did you want to introduce this to us?
Absolutely. So at this time, we will have Dr. Wilson Turner come forward with our acceleration and enrichment policy. She's done quite a bit of work on this and engaged multiple levels of stakeholders, and so we're very pleased to share this as it is a new policy. So thank you very much, Dr. Wilson Turner.
Good evening. Again. So I will start by saying I was not alone in my task, and for which I am very grateful. And some of my team members are present here this evening, and I will ask them, when appropriate, to join for questions if there are any at the conclusion of the presentation. So just a brief timeline of the acceleration policy development. In December, we began as a small district internal task force to look at actually our retention, promotion, policy and how we might incorporate acceleration and enrichment into that policy. And in order to do that, we felt we needed to get a state of the state, which I will address throughout the course of the presentation. We did have a diverse stakeholder group from Cabinet, from our instructional leaders, and our instructional supervisors, principals, and APSTA and APSA leadership present as we began our discussions to assess where we were. From that, we established some clear research, some sample policies, and a process by which we wanted to then bring it to a larger stakeholder group to begin to develop a policy specific to acceleration and enrichment. We did that work in February and March. We were able to engage a more diverse stakeholder group that incorporated parents, teachers, additional principals, teaching assistants, guidance counselors, so that we could get a range of perspectives to participate in the conversation around acceleration and enrichment, and through that process determined that we would recommend a separate policy from promotion and retention. I will go through the process that we used to establish our policy that is before you this evening. And in April and June, we had the opportunity to engage the Board Policy Committee to discuss the policy and to make any necessary revisions. So one of the most important things that we did, both in our smaller task force group and our larger stakeholder group, was to decide upon common language. We throw around terms like acceleration, gifted, and enrichment very broadly, and we wanted to make sure that we were all talking about the same thing when we use those terms, and so we went to the research for that purpose. These common definitions are also included in the policy, so that we are continuing to use that common language. And I'm not going to read the definitions to you, but one of the significant differences between acceleration and enrichment is acceleration is you are physically moving past the curriculum that is typical for your grade level, whereas enrichment is you are going deeper and broader into the existing curriculum that is appropriate for your grade level. We had a great conversation about giftedness and twice exceptional students, and really getting to understand that giftedness is a very small segment of the population in particular areas. And then twice exceptional are those students who have not only the academic gifts, but who also have a cognitive or social disability, and those students cannot be excluded from opportunities because of those disabilities that they obtain. So we started our work with our current district beliefs and practices. We went to our promotion and retention policy where there was some key language about students who achieve mastery in a shorter period of time, but the policy did not reflect specific steps or actions that we take to support students who achieve mastery in a shorter period of time. And so we started our work from there, and we worked with the larger task force around if we really believe that we should provide opportunities for students who achieve mastery in a shorter period of time, what do we want it to look like and what do we want to represent for our district? And so that was the foundation for our work. Then we moved into reflecting on the current practices, both at the elementary, middle, and high school, and they are each very different. So right now, sad to say, the elementary arena is the place where we have the least amount of acceleration and enrichment opportunities. In fact, primarily what exists at the elementary level is acceleration, and that's primarily through parent advocacy or teacher or principal advocacy. There isn't a concrete process by which we are being proactive in identifying students who would benefit from being accelerated, and so it's one of the things that we're going to work on in our next steps. We do something called content acceleration, where we may advance a student in a particular content area. So if I'm a really strong reader, we'll let you go to second grade for ELA even though you're a first grader. Or we'll let you go to second grade for math. Very challenging when you think about scheduling and students not missing particular things. And so we do want to think of more effective ways to make sure we are able to meet the needs of our elementary students. Middle school and high school are a little bit more developed than the elementary schools, and so there were some current practices. Middle school has shifted over the last 2 years, I would say, in the work that they've done around their acceleration and enrichment efforts to really shift from a single person making the determination around whether or not a student was eligible for acceleration or enrichment to really creating criteria with parent and teacher input. They continue to have what's called whole grade acceleration, where you can skip a grade if you are that proficient, and then content acceleration in math and science specifically, and then enrichment in honors and ELA. ELA and social studies. High school, really the acceleration at high school falls into two categories, and that's early graduation, and we'll talk a little bit more about credit by examination on the next slide. And then the rest of the options really at the high school are really enrichment. You are doing grade level appropriate content, but if you're taking an AP or an honors or a university in a high school classroom, you're able to go deeper into that particular content area. Oh, here's my chart. So in this chart, it shows you what we have available in terms of acceleration, K6, 6, 8, and 9, 12, and then what we have available in terms of enrichment. And this is a chart that we, in a different format, went through with our larger task force so they could have an understanding what the offerings were, where our gaps were, and what we wanted to make sure our policy covered. And that just because we didn't currently have things in place for acceleration and enrichment at the elementary level, we wanted to make sure that the policy would be inclusive of what we would want to do in those particular areas. So from the research, we went and identified critical policy components for an acceleration and enrichment policy. And we worked in teams, once we were familiar with the research, to develop the components of our policy to meet these particular areas. One of the areas that was confusing was equity and accessibility, access, and open communication with parents. And they kind of all seem to be the same thing about providing information. And so these definitions provide a clearer picture of what the differences are. So for equity and accessibility, it's about not leaving it to chance that a child has access to these programs. It's that active search and making sure that we have students participating who are eligible. Access is about the actual availability of the documents and the fact that they are translated in languages that parents can access and can understand. And then open communication is really about communicating with parents throughout the process and not leaving it to chance if they know if their child's going to be in an honors or be accelerated process. And so we wanted to make sure that we clarified those a little bit more in the policy process. We spent a lot of time not a lot of time, but we spent a lot of time on the fair, objective, systematic assessment and progress monitoring, and thinking about all the data points that we have in our system that we can utilize. And in our board policy discussion, discussed the importance of using measures that are reflective of the aptitude and ability of all of our students, and is not a measure that would somehow not capture that based on the design of the actual measure. We thought it was important for there to be an appeals process as a part of the policy so that parents who were not in agreement with whether or not their child was accepted into the program still had an opportunity to contribute before final decisions were made. And as we do with all of our policies, include a regular review of the policy around data, specifically around impacting students' ability to access not only just the acceleration enrichment that we want to develop at the elementary school and that we have at the middle school, but also to make sure that students are increasing their access to the enrichment and acceleration opportunities at the high school. So we have two really concrete next steps once the policy is approved. The public access to acceleration criteria that, acceleration programming that currently exists, we would like to have available by September 2019 so that we begin that transparency for our families. And then the Elementary Acceleration and Enrichment Task Force will begin its work and try to conclude its recommendations in time for budget seasons. As we know, it will have some budgetary impact as what we would like to design and implement at the elementary level. And so before I conclude, in the audience I have Sarah McGraw, who is our elementary STEM instructional supervisor, Jen Houlihan, who is our just now only ELA supervisor, no longer humanities supervisor, who were significant contributors to our team, in addition to Assistant Superintendent McKenna and Director of Curriculum Instruction, Karen Bechtel. So all of them would be available to answer a question in case I cannot.
So, board colleagues, I remind you, we're not acting on this tonight. This is a very big policy with a lot of ramifications. I don't feel in any way committed to us acting on it next time. This is a big topic. This engendered a fair amount of discussion at the policy committee meeting, and so I want you to feel free to ask questions and think deeply about this policy. This is not a compliance policy, or we're not under any obligation to adopt this policy. This is about the philosophy of this district and how we are going to treat our students. And I really want to thank the staff for bringing this policy forward. There's been a lot of discussion about this topic at the board table, and certainly among the active parent community for many, many years. And to have it come to us as a policy where we can create a foundation that will allow the district staff to stand on solid ground as they move forward with this, I think is a real testament to the improvement in the sort of policy governance model that we have been really doing a good job trying to implement here in the district. So thank you very much for bringing it in this format. With that, as always, we're going to do one question at a time. Who would like to go first? Dr. Tutor?
So I know we had a very robust conversation in policy. So this is a great policy, and it addresses the other end of the spectrum, which has for long been ignored, and which is not fair to those students. I do hear some concerns in the community about grade skipping or acceleration in that respect, where let's say a kid comes into second grade with a third grade reading ability or what have you, and so what happens when they come to, so if it's a first grade kid who's already reading at a third grade level, and now he's going to be in that class, he or she's going to be in that classroom, you have that kid who is not emotionally a third grader, right? So there's those challenges, and that goes with every school level, where now if there's a fourth or a fifth grader who's now taking a sixth grade class, now that's a middle school kid who's taking class in high school. So how can you, is there a way to alleviate that? Because at least in the middle school, you're busing them to the high school, which creates another challenge where now you have to provide transportation. They may miss, you have scheduling conflicts where they have classes that are, or sports activities that are back in the middle school. Sorry, it's a rambling question, but you know what I'm.
So one of the things I would say about reading in particular, which is what we do see a lot, is that students do tend to be, a grade level above in their reading. And we are supposed to be able to address that when we divide our reading instruction to meet the needs of students, particularly at the elementary level, where we have consistent small group instruction every single day based on students' data. But we do sometimes have a child who is even above and beyond where the rest of their classmates may be. But I think what the standards allow us to do is to go deeply into the standards and skills that are required, not just the word calling aspect of reading. And so how do we get students to go deeper into the standards, not just for their grade level, but the progression to the next grade level within their current context, without pushing them to the next grade where they are not developmentally appropriate and may not be, accelerated in math or science or the other components that may be there. And so it is on us as a staff right now at the elementary level to ensure that we're using the resources that we have to differentiate and provide that structure for those students. However, at the same time, we recognize that we can do more for those students who are able to gobble up that reading information and to be able to go deeper into the standard more effectively with a group of students. And that's part of the work of the elementary task force, is to develop a structure where we can actually enrich those students and to continue to challenge them in their existing setting without having to isolate them or pull them out of that setting. Now, have there been instances where students have been advanced enough in reading and just advanced enough in math that we make that decision to go ahead and let them accelerate to the next grade? Yes, but then it becomes our responsibility to monitor and the success of that student, both academically and social emotionally, to make sure that they are, continue to be appropriate for that acceleration. We are lucky at the elementary level to have reading coaches, to have reading teachers, to have all the, TAs, all these staff people that we've put in place to support typically our struggling students. We have to leverage those staff persons to also provide the response to intervention for our accelerated students.
Ms. Alexander-Mann.
Well, I was just going to comment that as we went through the exercise of putting together this policy, that even though we found that there weren't a lot of opportunities in the elementary, we found out there weren't a lot of opportunities. So now we can actually focus on that. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say. So.
Ms. Krejci.
I just wanted to thank you because I think it's exciting to have this as a base policy, and it's exciting to talk about publishing the criteria for the various programs and making them public. I just was kind of curious about how much we track, because like this report mentions whole grade acceleration, and I didn't even know that we did that. Do we track like how often we do that? Is there some, I'm not asking for the numbers, I'm just curious if there's a system to track that.
So no, there's not a system to track it, and as a result of there not being a system to track it, some children have been accelerated without the knowledge of individuals who should be aware that that child has been accelerated. And that's how you end up with someone who's in 4th grade doing the 6th grade curriculum, and now we got to figure out how we're going to get them the 7th grade curriculum in their 5th grade classroom, and their classroom teacher's looking at you like, I can't teach 7th grade math to this particular student. And so it's one of the things that we've noticed, especially with the addition of instructional supervisors specific at the elementary level for STEM and humanities, that we have developed our own little process. But again, we know that we're being reactive to address our current situation, to address parents who bring us their children and say, my child is accelerated here. And Sarah and Lynn have done a really nice job of developing assessment reports and making sure that those children are screened, assessed, both academically and social emotionally, and then they make a recommendation to me as to whether or not they feel that this child will be appropriate. And then we try to establish a process where the RTI team meets on that student very early in the year to assess their progress and whether they're going to be successful. But right now, we are just responding and leaving it to chance, and there is a system that needs to be developed.
Do we do early entrance too? I didn't know we could legally do.
We do, yes, by state law, you can do early entrance.
Thanks.
I just wanted to ask an overarching question, which is, I've gotten a fair amount of feedback on this policy, more than typical from people who are not on the board. And one of the questions that came up repeatedly is, does this apply to this? Does this apply to this? Does this apply to this? Does it apply to, for example, the selection of who's going to be in honors classes in middle school? Does it address, are we talking about, and I think this actually might be a language change you might want to look at. The only paragraph that really speaks to the fact that we're committing to provide acceleration or enrichment opportunities, I think may be a little too broad. And now I think everyone knows philosophically I'm in favor of ensuring that every single child in this district, including our advanced children, are met where they are and helped to move forward. But the language, depending on how you read the comma, says the district will provide acceleration and enrichment opportunities to all students in alignment with the established criteria and the district's commitment to eliminate racial predictability of student success, inequities impacting marginalized and underserved populations, and systemic barriers to opportunities and access. That, the way it's written, commits us to providing to all students, right? And I just think we need to be very careful. I've learned carefully from the lawyers that we wish not to overcommit the district to things that we might have to bankrupt the district in order to provide. And that brings up this question, which many parents have asked me, which is, well, what about music? Are we committing to provide acceleration and enrichment in music? What about in art? What about, like, clarifying what we're really talking about so that we don't overextend and overcommit in the language of the policy. And so, hang on, I just wanted to flip over to my notes for a second so I don't forget what I was going to ask. I also think it's, the question has come up, does this mean that they're going to give up on differentiation in the classroom and just do external right? And I know from having sat in the room with you that that's not the intention, but somehow in the opening language of the policy, identifying the fact that we expect every child to have access to differentiation within their classroom. Similarly, I got the question, about enrichment in particular, we're not saying, and I know we're not saying, that only our accelerated students should get an enriching experience, right? That we're not saying that. But somehow clarifying that language so that it's clear that the classroom experience should be an enriching and engaging curriculum. That's what we're doing here. That's our aim, is for every child to have an enriching and engaging curriculum. So we're not in any way saying we're going to give up on that. Like clarifying those sort of edge cases so that when people read this policy, there's fewer big picture questions. So does this lead to skipping a grade? Like we are committing in this policy to sharing our criteria for whatever our acceleration. So are we saying we're going to be explicitly sharing with parents in advance, here's what the process is for skipping a grade? So like knowing what this policy applies to and what it doesn't apply to would be important before we commit to a huge amount of process and procedures that we didn't mean to. So that's my overarching topic comment, is like figuring out the applicability and getting it in the overarching language so that that addresses some of those questions. I don't know if you want to respond to that or if you just want to take that under consideration, but that's my comment.
I mean, I think the question about the special areas is an important one. I would say we would want to be careful there. Because what could we consistently offer at every elementary school, let's say, for every gifted and budded artist or musician that we may have, or athlete, where we don't even have intramural sports at our elementary level. So I think that's a very valid consideration in terms of the breadth and depth of what we're covering with acceleration. Absolutely, and like you said, knowing from sitting in the room with me, there's no way that we can provide instruction without continuing to scaffold and provide differentiation to meet the need of every student. So that does not go away or is not going to be solved simply by pulling out and enriching a particular group of children. And so yes, the classroom experience will still be a place for enrichment. And as you will see in the elementary school improvement plans, that exposing students to grade level standards in a way that is rigorous and accessible is a key part of our work. And is the key and linchpin to true equity in our system. And that is our target and our goal. And so that piece absolutely would not be going away. And as far as transparency and criteria, right now at the middle level, at the secondary level with scheduling, they have the ability to shift the teacher to, okay, now we have 6 sections of honors instead of 7 sections of honors. Whereas at the elementary level, if we're doing a particular enrichment program and that number continues to grow and grow and grow like we want it to, are we really going to be able to provide pull-out enrichment services or whatever it is that we choose to design for every single student who we will eventually have qualify to participate in those programs? Because if our long-term goal, which I know it is to make sure that we are preparing children from the time they walk in our door for the types of classes we want them to take at the high school, then that number is going to grow significantly.
Dr. Chator, then Ms. Krejci.
So I have a philosophical question. I struggle with this, with my own words. So do you think it's better to give all the kids in the class an honors level education? And even if they don't perform at that level, they're better off than otherwise?
Absolutely. Research has shown if you treat children as if they are gifted, they will perform as if they are gifted.
And that's what we will be doing, right?
Yes.
Ms. Krejci.
I just had a question, and that was in reference to, there's language in the proposed policy that says that we won't, that access won't be first come, first served. If there's more qualified students than available seats, we'll do something like a lottery. And then there's also mention of an appeals process. And I was curious, if you already have 30 kids in honors math and then 3 more appeal and meet the appeals process, I would assume, doesn't have anything to do with space available.
So I don't think we can write a policy that says if we have space, we'll meet
but
your
that's
need,
what I'm saying,
right? So I agree. So I don't think we can say that, but the purpose of the appeals process is for a parent to say, I know my kid missed it by 2 points, right? But I really think, you know, if you took another look, or if you considered these pieces, or you may not know that, like, it's a process to give parents voice and for them to have a true understanding of how we arrived at the decision that we made.
And I understand. I was just trying to say that the lottery system language might be problematic because I'm reading it in conjunction with the appeals process, and I'm thinking, would that mean if people get in versus the appeals process, you're going to kick out people that were in the program at first? How does that work?
I
Maybe
think
that
when we
language
talked about it in policy committee, the way I was envisioning it, and maybe this does need to be reworded in there, is that the appeal was to get into the lottery, right? The lottery would only be among the qualified students to access if we had a limited set of seats for, and I don't think honors is a good example because I believe that we are now in a place where if a child deserves to be in the honors, they're in the honors program, right? We're not limited by seats, seat availability on honors.
Not that I'm aware of, and I'm not going to speak to it.
Okay, so
But I think secondary is different in
Right.
that vein, right? Because I can build a class. You tell me I've got 35, then I shift, you know, what the teacher's teaching. At elementary, we have finite, you know, resources in terms of that person's with those children all day long. I don't get to pick another enrichment teacher up that can come in and do that particular work. So we do really have to think K-12 through that policy, and with that elementary piece not being fully defined, you know, the question that Ellen asked is a really good one. Like, if I have to go through a lottery to get this position, but I am qualified technically to get it, you know, that'll be a challenge for us.
Because
Yeah.
you can't start the appeals process until you know you weren't chosen, which means other students have been informed that they were chosen, who might who might in future lose it. That's what concerns me. That
So
theory.
I'm open to further conversation about that. And everybody knows I say this all the time, so there's no surprise. My issue is not using first come, first served as our model for delivering limited resources, because that always, always, always benefits the families who have their act together the most. So however we work it out,
And I don't
I
think,
totally agree with you. I just
yeah,
wanted to
I don't
find
think
something that's equitable.
by virtue of how we want, if we replicate the middle school model, which we intend to, which we have termed the child find model, we're not leaving it to chance that, you know, parent A gets in line first and fills out their application. We are looking for our own children through our data to identify them. But we're going to eventually run into that problem where we have more students who qualify based on our criteria than we have program seats available, particularly at elementary. So when we go to our task force work, we have to be thoughtful about what we design. So one of the parents at the table said, well, why don't we create a school for all the kids who need enrichment and for, you know, for giftedness and send them all over there? And I'm like, well, no, we want to keep them in our schools and a part of their school community and, you know, all those pieces. But there will come a point in time where, you know, if I'm putting a enrichment teacher in a building for half a day and now she needs to be there full day, or now she needs to be there 3 days, and like, we're going to come into that challenge if we aren't really thoughtful about how we develop the model of enrichment.
although if that were to really happen, which would be fabulous, our tier one would change,
Yes, it
right?
would.
Our tier one would elevate. Anybody else with a second question? My second question was, are there in what ways would be appropriate for this policy to have some milestones, markers for what is and is not permissible in terms of implementation? Because almost everything in this policy, when you read it, is about selection. It's like it's 2 pages and about 85 to 90% of it is about selection, and just the one sentence I already read out loud is about actual delivery. And so right now, the board is providing no guidance for what might be developed. So for example, staff would be permitted under this policy to define a gifted school and pull our top 10% of school children out of every school and put them there. I know that's not your intention. I have full confidence that that's not the intention, but the policy gives you no demarcations as to what direction philosophically we're going. And I know that when we talked about this in policy committee, the hope is we're trying to give the task force room to work, to define something and to design something. But I'm wondering if it would be helpful to give you the foundation that we've talked about in the policy, to just, something about what is and is not the way the implementation is visualized. And I'm trying to be very loose in my language because I really don't want to tie the hands of staff. I want to give the task force the room it needs, but I do think there are philosophical things that we know we don't want to do, right? We know we don't want a gifted and talented school. That's a perfect example. So I want all of this to, go back, think about it, and maybe even talk with the proto task force about ways that might be done so that the policy has a little more meat on the implementation side, so that you don't have to even ask the question, and you can say to a parent who comes with that idea, well, the board policy has defined we're going to operate within this set of milestones, and that's not permissible. So
in the policy as it is written right now, the committee is going to review it on an annual basis. So I think some of those issues, as they are identified, will be reviewed by that committee, and solutions will be proposed to the board through their annual report. The board is going to review it every 3 years, right? But the committee is going to be looking at every year. So
And I'm thinking deeply about what you said, because I can understand wanting to put some parameters in there, but then I'm balancing again how much of the policy itself is, what our commitment and belief is around, versus what the specific regulations, protocols will be that sit separately from the policy itself. That kind of limits those things and allows us more flexibility in terms of changing them, because the policy may not come up to be changed every 3 years, until every 3 years, but the regulations, if we're reviewing annually our work around enrichment, is something that we can continue to modify and change. So I'm thinking about, because I understand what you're saying, we don't want to go down a road that no one is committed to, but I think some of our other policies may prevent us from doing so. So, would it be equitable to have a separate school with just these children over here? And I think we could argue that our other policies wouldn't permit for that to occur as well.
Ms. Krejci.
I'm thinking about what you said, Ms. Savage, and I'm wondering, I don't know if there's a way to word this, or if it would be helpful at all to put it in the policy. Is there a way to word that in addition to our commitment to challenge and success and enrichment, we also value, let's say, we value educating children among children of their same age, and we value educating children at their neighborhood school, where they can stay at their neighborhood school and yet still have opportunities. Maybe not.
So I think that needs some wordsmithing, but that's the kind of philosophical language that's in my mind. It's not a, sort of
Specific,
this. It's a, the value, what we believe about education is that we believe that students are best served, that the district students are best served by having students educated within their cohort wherever possible. On the other hand, we do know that there are limitations right now to what
I think our wheels are turning about what that might need to be, but if we could take that back and kind of flush some things out. And I know that this policy will come forward for discussion again, and we'll be able to do some wordsmithing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the question for you all is to decide whether you want to go round again to policy committee and have another smaller discussion there, or if whether you want to come back to the board, and we'll just have to see how different the policy gets as you reflect on the conversation tonight. Dr. Chittor?
So in multiple places, it talks about the publicly available criteria, and I know that's going to be coming in September. Should that be part of the regulation 4760R, where that's defined, or does it need to be in the policy? I think having it in the regulation might be better, because then it's tunable.
Point out again where you are, because I lost that track.
I mean,
Right now, the plan is to make the criteria available in, because right now middle school has a criteria. The high school criteria is already there. It's a prerequisite for that particular class, and then, you can meet with your guidance counselor, et cetera. So I think the plan right now is to place it into the middle school handbook, which is a document that is used by every parent as they're trying to make those decisions to make it publicly available. And because if we would put it there, then I think it would be most appropriate for the regulation sections. Again, for the purposes if it has to be revised, it could be done so annually.
Because that language is in the PowerPoint, but it's not in the policy, right? Did I miss something?
Policy.
It is? It says September?
No, it doesn't say September. It just says that the criteria will be made
Policy
publicly
doesn't
available.
say September. The presentation said that it will be available in September.
Right, okay. I was just making sure I hadn't lost something. Okay. Any other comments or discussion points on the policy? Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Wilson Turner, and the team in the back. We really appreciate all the hard work you put into that. Thank you so much. That brings us to our next discussion topic, which is the professional development.
Madam President, members of the board, I would like to just introduce Karen Bechtel, who will share with us the professional development plan, and also Ms. Jen Justice. So thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you and good evening. Just so everyone knows, Jennifer Justice is the mentor coordinator and also provides my office with support for professional development. So. Here. Thank you. This is new too. Okay, so we want to give you an update tonight about the professional development that has taken place over the past year and what we're looking at for 1920. So we'll start with rundown of our survey. We have really developed a system of giving a survey at the conclusion of every professional development day. Our questions are the same. We've honed those over time so that we can compare data from time to time. The highlight on this slide is really the question, how would you rate the overall value of the PD using a 1 through 5 scale? And you'll note that 78% for the May 21st professional development was 78% at level 4 and 5. So that was really a positive reaction to the professional development day. We did not conduct a survey on June the 27th because it was the last day of school. And what would have occurred is trying to get people to respond to those surveys would have been a bit of a challenge. And then the few that might have, we would end up with perhaps some skewed responses. We get a pretty good feedback from pretty good number of folks that respond to our survey. So we chose not to do that, but we did, as we always do, have the facilitators provide us with a reflection of the day and how that went. And we will be giving you some highlights on those in about a minute. So one of the really great things that happened this year as a result of systemizing our survey process is that we really do have an opportunity to look at what has been done and how the audience has responded and then change that for the next time. So on May the 21st, we took a look at, actually it wasn't me, it was Carrie Canzoni-Ball, director of PPS, who has really put so much effort, wonderful effort into the trauma-informed care work. And she looked at the survey results and she said, I have to do something different. We were conducting some of those PDs in such large groups, auditorium-type professional development. And that was the feedback that we got from the participants. It was just too big. So Carrie sat down with her team, with us, and we talked about developing sort of an umbrella TIC PD plan, offering the 5 or 6 things that fall under that umbrella, having people sign up for the sessions, the individual sessions, in a smaller space. And it really went over so much better, anecdotally. Carrie actually said to me, Karen, I really wish we had done the survey because I feel confident that we would have had a positive response. So we have responsive professional development practices. We've been very responsive to the elementary principals. They really want to keep all their staff in the buildings on our 3 professional development days. but there's a little bit of, I would call it a tension, maybe not a conflict, just like a tension that almost should be there, in that we have departments such as all our Encore departments and our social emotional learning departments that have content professional development needs. And
If I can interrupt.
Yep.
I think it's everybody wants to provide PD. It's a very positive thing because everybody wants the time. So sometimes it's trying to balance how much people get the time. And I manage the schedule. They come into me and I think, all right, this person wants it. And the elementary teachers for a chunk of time. And so because they're teaching science and ELA and reading, everybody has a piece of it, and the social emotional piece is also part of it. So that's where the balance comes in. So it's a really good thing, but it's difficult.
we work hard on those schedules. So we worked with the elementary principals this year and have asked, we came to really a collaborative decision about having them do the core content areas in the morning so I could pull out the encores and the social emotional folks, and then in the afternoon everybody goes back where everybody in the building needs the social emotional work. So that went over really well. This year, for the first time, we did a teacher assistant survey. It's been on my mind for a while, but we have to pay attention to our capacity. TAs sit in APSU, and APSU has sometimes been the responsibility of HR. They sort of manage some of that, the professional development of APSU staff. But TAs really work with kids. They're teaching. They're more aligned to sort of the teaching force. So we just very explicitly agreed that my office would work on this from here on out, work on providing TAs with the best professional development they can get. So we ran the survey a little bit late, so we have 229 TAs and teaching aides and teaching assistants in our district, and we have had about 50 responses. So we'd like to have more, but we did get some great information for what we might like to do in September, and we will carry that piece on from here on out. And then Jen is going to give you some of the highlights from the June 27th PD.
So the June 27th PD, because it was so close to the May PD day, there was a lot of shuffling when the decision was made after looking at the survey results. And the way the survey is provided to people is they get a chunk of what was responded about their PD, so it's individual. They get to look at those results and then reflect on how they like to change things. So when Carrie came up with the idea, there was a lot of maneuvering to do that. But anecdotally, I went to Myers, as did Bobby Barber, who was a savior, I must say, to help just make sure that everything went smoothly. And overwhelmingly, people were very excited for it. They signed up in MLP, many of them, so we could manage numbers, which was another newer way to manage things, a process. And then we had facilitators who really stepped up and said, sure, I'll do that. And it went really well, and people were very excited to be there and to have choice because they could do two different things instead of just one, and they were not in a large group, it was small, and people had really good feedback. And then I also went to Toast to check in on nurses who also had a lot of positive things to say about their PD, and they were overwhelmed with, it was a continuation of the May PD, and it's difficult. This last day of school, people were, excited, if I could say that. And then the elementary PD also was a huge highlight because I think it was the way it was set up. Everybody got to be together for a small amount of time, and then they were broken down by grade level, which I think as a classroom teacher, everybody's looking for their colleagues to say, all right, so what did you do, and how did that work, and what's the best practice for this? And they like to be with each other in that way. And I asked my sister, who's an elementary special ed teacher, who she just said it was run really well. She liked the format. She felt like she walked away with some tools, and one of the comments that was made was, it's good PD when you leave and you're still talking about it. And I think for both May and June, that was something that came up that's important. I know that the math manipulatives, Sarah McGraw met with the elementary TAs, and I think that's really important because, again, the TAs work with children all day, and sometimes they wonder why they're doing what they're doing, and so that was targeted and specific, and also a reaction to, okay, we have TAs, and there are different groups. We have the special ed TAs and elementary and the reading TAs, and so what are we going to do to meet the needs of all those people? So I think we did a pretty good job, if I can say so.
Okay, let's move on. We also did, the middle school science teachers were thrilled because they were working with their new resource, always a highlight. And the K-12 PE teachers did indeed do their sort of categorizing that Ashley Chappell spoke about, and that was a very successful activity. Okay, whoops, what'd I do? I messed something up. See if you can figure. I think I just hit a wrong button. Okay. No. No, back. Well, no.
You're going forward.
Can you fix it from there, Sierra? We're on the slide that says September 18th through August 9th, 2019 conferences. And I'll just start there. We had 686 staff attend conferences in that period of time. And really, what I'd like to point out is I looked at all the large groups because I thought you might ask this question. And almost always, they are going in the summer and when school is not in session. We've done a really good job of making sure that we're not sending tons of people out during the actual school day. We really want to try to capitalize on summers for professional learning. I think I touched a button, which is what this is. Yes, thank you. And the next one. This is a new tool that came in from the last time I was here. I think if I turned something on the, all right, thank you. Okay, so the 2019-2020 professional development days, we have the superintendent's convocation and the building meetings on the 3rd. September 4th is the teacher prep day by contract. And then September 5th, November 5th, May 19th are our 3 professional development days, and they are actually planted in the year pretty good. They're just well laid out there. Then we go to the middle school early dismissal days. This was something that we wanted to do this year. Did you want to speak to this one first? Okay.
So we did exit tickets, and we also had a reflection from the facilitators from the middle school day, and then and also just checking in with teachers. Overwhelmingly, teachers really liked this PVD format, that they had the time again together to be able to talk about grade level issues and curriculum, and it was a positive, what I got out of it, what people told me, it was a positive day.
Just so I could clarify what exactly the structure was, is that one day last year in January, we took advantage of the contractual day that is required for people to be after school for 1 hour. We dismissed at 1:30, and the kids got out, and then people were able to travel, and then the middle school teachers met from 2 until 4. So it was 1 hour on sort of the district time and then 1 hour on sort of that after school time, and it was a really nice marriage. We had great feedback. It was requested that we do it again. We met with the middle school principals over the last week or two, and they agreed on Wednesday, January 15th and Wednesday, February 26th, we would replicate that. The idea was that we would have professional development in September, then November, then we'd have these 2 hours January, these 2 hours February, and then into May. So we're excited about being able to do that. And then I wanted to speak a little bit about the elementary embedded PD. Last year, we've reported on it from time to time. It was the trying to get the subs for the scope of what we were doing was sometimes quite challenging. There was one session that we actually ran in the schools where the coaches had pushed into the schools and they pulled the schools' grade level teachers, a couple hours here, a couple hours there. And it was that they loved, and they greeted very positively. So when we started planning for any embedded work this year at the elementary level, that was the model that we have chosen to use. And it will be very coach-driven. Sarah and McGraw and Lynn Strang will be doing a lot of work to calibrate the coaches. But what will happen is third grade teachers will take their half hour of common planning time, and they'll come out and for 2 hours instead of that half hour with the coach and do some of that embedded work that they need. So we'll do, every teacher will have 2 or 2.5 hours 4 times during the year. And it will be at the building level with the grade level teams. And then the only pullout at elementary that we'll have is we are going to have 1 half day in September for year 1 and 2 elementary teachers to really go over the resources and really make sure that they're familiar, they know what they are doing, and really get out ahead of it and make sure that those groups have what they need to get moving. And then the next slide. Thanks, Sierra. And this was the middle school embedded PD. The middle school had been wanting to do this for a while, but we could not do it last year because we were so focused on elementary. What we are looking to do is ELA for grades 6 through 8 with a true studio model, which is a wonderful research-based model where you do some professional reading, you have discussion, then you plan a lesson together collaboratively, probably in groups. You take the lesson to a live classroom, and one teacher who volunteers delivers the lesson. Everybody else is sort of in the back of the room. The kids are usually they're very good when we do things like this. And then the group comes back and sort of debriefs about that lesson. And so they really walk away with some in-the-moment, good professional development. And we will do that for 5 full days. It's actually 10 because when we looked at 6 through 8, it was too many people. So we broke it up, and we're just going to do 6th grade for 5 days and then 7th and 8th for 5 days. So twice the work for the instructional supervisor, but it will lessen the impact on the sub-issue. Math is a little bit different. They're half-day sessions 4 times a year to really focus on the curriculum, focus on the standards, and really this concept of math talk. We really need to get our students speaking about how they're doing math with one another, and there are strategies to teach folks how to foster that so that children are really, they really learn the math that way when they have that opportunity, when it's not just a right and wrong, when you can engage in discussion about how you can arrive at the solution. So that's what will happen there. I spoke a little bit longer than I wanted to, and I think that brings us to questions.
Thank you very much. We always appreciate both the quantitative information and the anecdotal information. Gives us a little insight into the experience you all have. Board colleagues, questions? Ms. Alexander-Mann?
I have 2 questions.
Can you please hold
I'll
to
start with my
one
first one.
question? Thank you.
So I really appreciated the fact that we're providing the professional development also to the TAs. And I think that in some ways, perhaps that could be maybe a growth opportunity for some TAs to think beyond, maybe I would want to pursue teaching or something like that, so it's more of I'm not sure that was the intent, but I think that's very positive. And also just recognizing probably was very validating for the TAs to be included. So that's my statement.
Dr. Stewart.
I know we are sending a lot of people for PD, for conferences and stuff over summer. Are we getting reports back from them and archiving those so that that information can be available to other people who haven't gone to that conference?
The way that we do it is we ask people, they don't write a report, they have an obligation to turnkey to their colleagues in a variety of ways. And generally, the principals will hold people accountable for that work, and the instructional supervisors. we want to make sure that what they're learning is coming back. And so that is how we manage that piece.
And is it being transferred to the people who might be doing similar stuff but are not in the building or didn't go to, you know what I'm saying? Like there's a science teacher who goes to a conference somewhere, and that person teaches this school, but there might be 3 other science people who also teach the same thing, but who haven't gone to that conference. If that information can be shared across their cohorts, then it's...
I would say that with the way that we construct our 3 PD days each year, where people have a half day with their departments, that work of that nature occurs there. And then also, you know, especially if we're talking about science, we're talking primarily at that secondary level, right? So they have opportunities also in their middle school teaming and places like that, and in order to engage in those kinds of conversations and turnkey. And sometimes the turnkey is more formal even, and say, you have 20 minutes at our department meeting, you know, go. And yes, and yep.
I just had one really procedural question, which is do the grade 6 elementary teachers participate on the middle school days, or do they participate on the elementary days, and how do you manage that?
We have always, since I've been here, worked very hard, and we're pretty successful at making the 6th grade a part of the 6-8 band. So the 4 schools where we still have 6th grade will attend this embedded PD. That is 6th grade focus. It's why we broke it up even in that particular manner, so that we could address the needs of that group. Sometimes it's a little weird because the 6th grade teacher in the elementary building might be teaching science and math, and we have on the PD day a science content and a math content. But what we're trying to do is be attentive to that, and because now we have lone supervisors, we can actually, we think, flip them so that even if they can't access it in September, they can perhaps access the science in November.
Anyone else have another question? Oh, it was already answered? Okay. Thank you very much for the report and the information. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
That brings us to board committee reports. Do we have any board committee reports tonight? Ms. Smith.
Thank you. I just really want to say that we've had, I think, maybe 2 facility committee meetings that we haven't reported on, but and that has to do with our own structure of board meetings. But generally, I just want to say we continue to meet regularly. The board facilities committee met, in fact, this week, and we are continuing to get reports and monitor the Albany High rebuild, in particular, paying attention to budgets for each phase, and listening to also or hearing what staff concerns, thoughts are, especially programmatically at the high school, and those discussions are going to become more important as we go to phase 3 and 4, 2, 3, and 4, and so forth. So anyway, it's an exciting time. What can I say? And today also, I think, as Dr. And soon to be Dr. Adams, as Ms. Adams spoke, there was the career fair at Brooklyn, great attendance, and I really had the pleasure of being there this morning and sitting in and also doing a tour of the building again. And again, it's amazing to see what happens in less than a month's time. And each time I'm walking through, I'm just excited. I want to be a kid again, going through this experience. And I just, and also having shared that experience with a number of gentlemen who were looking to make a career in the trades, the experience that they had walking through the building, getting a sense of, what it was going to be like, and from, all the academy floors, and I mean, they were just like, wow, this feels like college, right? But it really made a difference for them to see the trades coming together. And we did, in fact, have, I think, all 17 trades there, if I'm correct, Mr. Lesko. And it was terrific to be working, talking with them as well. So all is really good. And of course, I just lost my place around the next meeting, but there's probably one coming up in August. The 20th, there we go, thank you. I knew someone would have it.
So it's August 20th?
August 20th at 5:30 at Academy Park right now. So nothing really earth-shaking to share with the board, just that there's excitement and progress every day. I did want to just make one note. The general manager and the architect, we are hoping and continuing to hope that we find no new discoveries or things as we move through the phases. So that would be very good, because that's one way in which we can stay on budget through the phases. So we'll keep you posted. And I know you're getting those reports through board docs. So any questions, let us know. But thank you very much.
Any other committee reports tonight?
Policy didn't meet this month, so our next meeting is on the 14th of August.
All right, that brings us to other business. Are there any items of other business tonight? So the question from Dr. Chator, for those who are in the room, this is actually, we're going to make this a formal board topic for next time so that it is announced as well as discussed, but we have talked informally about potentially moving the time of the public portion of the board meeting to 6:30 rather than 7, and we're interested in getting that feedback from our members of our community about whether that would impact people's ability to participate in public comment. And so we will be having that as a formal topic on the board agenda. At least that's my intention, to expose that idea in agenda setting, that we would have it as a formal topic, because that way, with our new process, which has gotten much good feedback from, I have gotten much good feedback on, that the communications department is doing for us, where they take the topics from the agenda and include those on the SNN. That way, members of the public will see as a topic board meeting start time or something, whatever we decide to call it, and have that opportunity to reflect on that. But that is something that the board is talking about informally and expects to talk about formally on the 8th. And then, assuming no surprises,